Okay, so I wanted to talk part three about tools. And what I mean by tools is like your creative content software, your blenders, your Maya, your Photoshops, your what's the stuff that's worth paying for? What's the stuff that's worth using open source for? All of those type of things really start to become very, very important to you. The larger your crew, your staff gets. Um, I might have brought this up before, but we at one point had over 70 staff members. 30 of them were real time animators, and they needed a specific software that was rather expensive. And then on top of that, each one had a um, Adobe account that had access to pretty much all of the creative tools that were available for Adobe. That in its individual cost can be quite expensive. Now you do get a break on buying in bulk, but it's only but so much of a break. So every month we were literally paying the equivalent of someone's payroll salary to pay for software just from Adobe. That wasn't even including something like, say, Autodesk and the different tools we were using from them, which were things like Maya, which were things like 3D Max. Yes, we still use 3D Max, some of us. Motion controller, motion builder, and for me, something like Sketchbook Pro. But I ended up purchasing my own copy to take that um, business expense off the company. Now that said, that's not the only tools we had to think about. We also had the main tool that we use for all of our sculpting, which was ZBrush. ZBrush is owned by a completely different group. Used to be Pixelogic, now it's Maxon. Maxon finally released their copy or version of ZBrush iPad. So far, so good. It controls pretty good. I like what I'm seeing here. It's pretty comprehensive. It's all there. It is $10 a month for the full subscription of it. I believe if you pay for it for a full year, it's $83. But for that tool that you get on the iPad, it's an amazing setup. So if you were very interested in getting ZBrush, but the cost factor was a thing, and believe me, eight almost $900 for a license these days for ZBrush. When I purchased my license, which is almost 12 years ago, I think I paid a little over 500. So that price has gone up considerably, almost double since then. But that said, ZBrush has been and still will be for the foreseeable future a industry standard tool. But then again, you see these AI models that are starting to create 3D models right off the bat with textures and decent UVs, and then you can take that model and bring it into something like Mixamo, um, and then skin weight it, and all of a sudden you've got a library of animations you can add to it. Things like that. Um, Taking consideration as well. But for your sculpting needs, for your 3D sculpting needs, something like ZBrush from Maxon is very good. Pretty much industry standard. Me personally, I'm also a fan of something like 3D Code. Right, so for instance, if you look at my tablet screen here, I've got my ZBrush 2022. Yeah, I'm still using my 2022 version because they really haven't had any significant PC updates since then, so I'm still waiting on that. And then I'm typically using 3D Code or 3D Code Textura, which is like Substance Painter but not as good. The interface just isn't there. I really think Substance Painter is better on that end. That said, 3D Code is very nice. I like this tool because it allows me to draw in 3D, which is very interesting. There's a tool in Blender called Grease Pencil, which is excellent for drawing in 3D space as well. Um, so if you get a chance to play with that, I highly recommend it. Clip Studio is another tool that I like to use, which is a alternative to my Photoshop drawing tools. Um, it's a lot more intuitive in terms of brushes and how to manipulate the brushes, and I should actually use it more. It just so happens that I've been using Photoshop for so long, I'm kind of just used to it. Just kind of one of those things. And then you have Sketchbook Pro, which was a Autodesk tool, which was then bought by Microsoft. I believe it's $24 or $20. Very comprehensive sketch tool as well for your tablet based Windows based tools. But for your bang for your buck, I'd recommend Clip Studio. especially if you want to do things like comic books or it's not just for illustration or sketches. It's a very, very good tool that has a lot of intuitive plugins like mannequins and poser tools that allow you to level up your art. So, out of these, if you're just starting out, I'd recommend Clip Studio and Blender to start with, and then then fill out from there. And the reason I recommend Blender over ZBrush is one, Blender's free, but the workflow for say high poly sculpting is significantly different than that of ZBrush. On Blender, you've got to get used to modifiers like multi-resolution modifier, and then being able to take and join two multi-res models together, and then be able to create an individual surface from that. It's a little bit different than say the subtool system in ZBrush. So but Blender as a sculpting tool is very viable. It can be done. It just doesn't get to the polygonal fidelity that say a ZBrush can get to. So that's just taking consideration. But for free, or I like to say free 99, Blender will certainly fill the void in a lot of ways. All right. So speaking of Blender and that end, you always hear this conversation about is it pro enough? Is it a pro tool? I have been using 3D animation tools since 3D Studio DOS, which was roughly what 1993. It was a long freaking time ago. Um, Damn right, Blender's pro enough. The answer is, what does your end result look like? Does it does it look good? Who cares what it's made in then? If it looks good, who cares? If somebody's giving you a bunch of shit because you did it in Blender instead of Maya, they've got a problem, and you're not it. They're the problem. Anyway, that part is on that. So you'll hear that Blender is not professional, or not. You'll hear that type of garbage from now and then. But at the end of the day, polygons are polygons. The biggest difference I'd say from Blender or any of these other tools is interface, learning and how to interact with that interface. That's the biggest thing. So for me, I am a industry vet that has a lot of left click selection or traditional keystrokes built in, just burnt in. 20 years of muscle memory I'm working with here. So Blender at least gave me a solid and gave me a industry standard setup. So I would say I'm roughly 70% functional of Blender functions and tools using the industry setup versus its traditional. And if there's something that has to be done or a certain tutorial in which you have to follow your traditional, I can easily switch back over traditional, struggle through it, get done what I need to get done, and then I can go back to industry tools. So it's been working pretty well in that regard. So it's been very beneficial, I would say. But for me, it's going to take a second to load out, but I should load it up because I wanted to talk about this. But for me, I'd say the biggest thing that made me go over to Blender was AutoRig Pro. Now, AutoRig Pro does things. There we go. Come on. I'm working on these side animations too, so that's why I got really weird naming conventions on some stuff. Let this load up. Now, this is a soldier for my Operation Hellfire title that me and a couple of co-workers are working on right now. And the thing that I really wanted to show here was that AutoRig Pro allows us to quickly make a quality based control rig that can be animated, or that we can add motion capture information over to very quickly. The cool thing about this setup is I was using a combination of Character Creator, and from Character Creator bringing this guy over, and getting the actual setup was pretty simple, straightforward. That's the character creation. There we go, AutoRig Pro. Getting the rig set, make it have the right character, and then having to match the rig. It does a lot of the tedious parts that you would find or have to do. It does a very good job of skin weighting right off the bat. So when you're doing some testing of them, like I was saying, the auto targeting, the animation targeting of new animations, be it hand or motion capture. Relatively easy to follow through with, especially once you get this model set up for something like Unreal Engine. Now the good news is that this setup already is ready for Unreal Engine, so I could just do an export of this as a FBX. And since the naming convention of these bones is something that Unreal Engine is familiar with, it's a lot easy to plug this character into the game side of Unreal Engine's character controllers. So that'll be the thing that I'll be doing next, I think, over the next couple of days as well. And the only reason it's taking me so long is because I haven't really fully done a character transfer like that. I'm used to bringing characters in and then just running a targeted animation over top of them. So this will be a different step for me. But nevertheless, Character Creator allows me to do some really fast, really accurate skin weight controls to models that that would take me days on end, especially not well, yeah, to get it right fully. It would take a couple days to get this right. So it's just a really good tool that's gonna be in the helmet to help with that sort of thing. Very fast, very efficient. And in this day and age, you really want to take advantage of tools like this if you can. My tool, I'm sorry, this um, title is a little bit more, has some realistic elements in it, but for the most part, when you see my characters or your character that you'll be playing as, it'll be roughly the size of that. Roughly around that size from the front. They don't have 8-way directional movement, but for the most part, that character model is going to look like this. You'll never get any closer to this in terms of the camera. So there's a lot that I could do in terms of optimizing the model to make sure that I'm running at a nice clean pace, especially if I'm going to do a title like this and put it on something like, say, cell phone, which is a platform goal for the company. All right, so where's that at? Okay, so wanted to talk briefly about some of those tools and how to utilize them. And I would just say, just have an open mind, especially now in this type of workflow. Like we talked about Cascader before, and how that type of AI assisted animation can really speed up your workflow for your animations, which in fact also can be retargeted to skeletons like we were just looking at, be it an Unreal Engine or Blender very quickly. So yeah, just some things to think about in terms of your CCS tools that you're going to be using. And that'll end number 3, and we got one more with number 4.